It was Catherine all along. I won't tell you a lot about the funeral. I don't remember it well, other than the flag on the casket, and the soldiers folding it solemnly, and the many people who paid their respects at the wake. So many of them thought I was a brother. That seemed weird to me, but my mom explained that it showed how many people from the community had come. A lot of them hadn't seen him or his mom or dad or brothers and sisters for years, yet they still remembered the family and Pete. There were a lot of pictures of him, and I was even in a couple of them. I hardly remember the actual funeral. I was glad I didn't have to speak. Gabrielle stood beside me the whole time, holding my hand, and I could feel the weight of many eyes, looking with tenderness and charity upon the sight of us, many eyes that welled with tears. For some reason, I remember sitting on my knees backwards in the seat as the car drove away, looking at the gravediggers as they got to work wrapping it up. Really, I don't remember the reception. But I do very clearly remember something that happened afterwards. At home, I took off my jacket and tie and threw them on the back of my desk chair, then sat down to think of what I should do next. I had already fixed Catherine's chair. She never noticed that anything was amiss. I saw the summer reading book on my bedside table, but that was out of the question. The thought of the box crossed my mind. I listened quietly, and I could hear my mother talking to Catherine downstairs. I pushed my shoes off with the opposite feet, one by one, and then crept to my door. They were pattering away with each other. I padded to my mother's room, quickly glided over to the closet, and saw a corner of the box on a high shelf. Mom had a makeup table in the room, so I got the chair and was able to reach the box. I put the chair back and then took the box back to my desk. First, however, I put my jacket on the floor, so if someone came, I could put the box under my bed and then the jacket in front of it. If my mother came in and wanted to hang it up, I would just act upset and say I'd do it myself. I looked at the box. I could remember from last time which way it should face, based on the subtleties of the grain and the arrangement of the wooden pieces. Set, focus, pull. I put my hands on the box with confidence and pressed it in 4 locations by instinct, and the box slowly opened. I practically shouted out with glee. It was my first real smile in days. Of course, the box was empty. My smile faded as a lightning bolt of thoughts blasted through my mind, and my seat pushed back as if by itself. My breathing stopped. The area just behind my lower jaw on each side began to ache. Of course, it was the G.I. Joe. That was Peter. It was G.I. Joe that Catherine threw into the box. She just threw it in there, casually, nonchalantly, uncaringly. And it disappeared, and then Pete disappeared. I turned toward the door. Catherine was laughing with Mom. Laughing. Goddamn laughing. I stood up, and it seemed like my shoulders lifted up by themselves. I felt I was trying to mouth something, and my right arm made a gesture in front of me and then closed to a fist. I started to cough. It felt like rage, but also sadness, confusion, betrayal. I leaned on the back of my chair and got myself to breathe normally again. Catherine. If she had just stayed out of my room like I wanted. My hands moved to the top drawer of my desk. I got a piece of paper and a pencil, and sitting down, scrawled Catherine in heavy, jagged letters. I picked the paper up and held it near the open box. I sat silent. I gazed at it for a long time. It felt like hours. Mom and Catherine chatted and laughed downstairs. I moved the paper closer. Nothing happened. I moved it over the empty space. I waited. Then I moved it even closer. So close my fingers were partially inside. My finger brushed the top of the box. At least I think it did. Snap! I snatched my hand back quickly, but the paper got snagged. The top closed on it, and a sliver of it was coming through the crack on top. I grabbed for it and tried to force the top open with my thumbs. It moved up a little, but that just allowed the paper to slide in, and the top closed again, this time firmly. The handles on the sides retracted. I stared at it for a moment and then grabbed it to get it to open again. There was no response. Starting to panic, I pressed on the spots I had used before, but the box would not open. No, I thought. I didn't mean to. I put my hands on the desk on either side of the box and calmed my breathing. Bending my head forward, I shut my eyes. My pulse went down. Set, focus, pull. I grabbed the box calmly, confidently. Nothing happened. I tried again. Nothing. I bowed my head. Then I stood up and clomped down the stairs. Catherine and Mom were still there, and when they saw me, their expressions went blank. I was panting again, and my face must have been red. My mother came to me and hugged me again. It's hard, Cam, I know. It's so hard. She rocked me back and forth, and Catherine even hugged me from behind, resting her head where my shoulder blade was. After a while, we sat at the kitchen table, and my mother made tea. She put in a lot of sugar, cream, and some cinnamon. I watched Catherine. She behaved well for me, and she was sad for me. Genuinely sad. We stayed together that whole evening, watching a couple of movies just to get our minds off things. I dozed off, and when I awoke, Mom was holding Catherine in front of her. One of Catherine's arms dangled down, and her head was lolling backward. I jumped to my feet, thinking she was dead. But she was not dead, just sound asleep. Shh, Mom said. She carried her up to bed. I took myself to bed, and Mom came in to kiss me goodnight. Pete knows you're sad, she said. Just pray for him and try to sleep. He'd want you to sleep and get a good rest. Yeah. She left the room, and I heard her put herself to bed. I kept saying to myself that I didn't mean to put the paper in, and that Catherine was alive. But I also knew that Pete had not been killed the moment the G.I. Joe went into the box. I didn't know exactly when, but it was later, and I knew that I really had meant to put the paper in. Did it work? The next morning, I was up first, already swimming in concern, guilt, and fear. I slipped out of bed and opened my door quietly. The house was silent. I crept toward my sister's room, keenly avoiding the spots that creaked, and I listened at her door. Hearing nothing, I turned the knob ever so slowly and peeked in. I could see Catherine's body on its side, facing the window, covers pulled up above her shoulders. I watched for a while, trying to detect breathing, and could hear none. I went back to my room, got a pencil from the can on my desk, and went back to her door. I threw the pencil on the ground to see if it would rouse her. It did not. But I heard my mother move in her bed, so I retreated to the hall, closed the door quickly but cautiously, and went downstairs to the kitchen. I sat and waited, staring back and forth between the window, the stairs, and the phone. In about 20 minutes, I heard my mother get out of bed and make her way downstairs. She walked into the kitchen in a half daze and started when she saw me. Cam, you scared me half to death. I couldn't sleep. She put water in the coffee machine. I wondered why I hadn't done that for her. Do you want something? Yes, please. Eggs? Sure thing. I wasn't hungry, and I watched her in silence. I got up to get dishes and silverware ready. 3 plates. Where's Catherine? My mother glanced at me quizzically. Are you, Cam, asking for your sister? I was just wondering. She seemed to reassess what she'd said. That's sweet, honey. We'll let her sleep, though. We sat for our breakfast, Mom with her coffee and me with a glass of water. I suppose we should go somewhere today, said Mom. I liked the idea. I could keep an eye on Catherine. Why don't we hike to Moose a little? I mean, not go all the way up, just the first part. Or like Sayre Peak. We can bring a little lunch. Okay. I kept looking at the stairs. We finished breakfast and Mom cleaned the dishes. I helped her. She gave me a sidelong glance as I appeared next to her at the sink, but said nothing. Finally, Catherine came down the stairs. I gave a big sigh, but tried to act normal when I said, "Hi." Everything was fine. And the hike was fine. No one fell, got injured, nothing. Just a nice little midday hike. Catherine was even very sweet, sharing a bag of M&Ms she had been saving and normally would have kept for herself. For that matter, she normally would have taunted me with it. Winning at risk. When we got back, I went to Jeff's so we could continue that old game of Risk, which had waited dutifully for us all that time, with only a little chaos inflicted by their cat. As planned, I hit North Africa, moved in enough troops to discourage a new attack, and just managed to take North America. I only had 2 guys defending Greenland. That is, it was not well defended. But knowing Jeff, he would do nothing about that and would try to take Asia, which would be a mistake. A terrible mistake. We played a few more rounds, mostly with me winning. But as dusk came along, I excused myself and went to say hi to Gabrielle. Unfortunately, she wasn't there. Damn. I wasted all that time with a stupid game. Now she was off somewhere with her mom and dad. Dejected, I walked slowly toward the road, stopping to pick up a stick so I could flip it at whatever bugs I could find flying around. Against the cobalt blue sky, I could see wisps of black as bats coursed through the air, so quick that I couldn't tell if they were real or just shadows in my peripheral vision. And swift and stealthy as a bat, a new thought flitted through my brain that stopped my breathing as though a weight were on my chest. What if it's Gabrielle? No, I blurted out as the now familiar tears came to my eyes. I dropped the stick and ran the rest of the way home, bursting into the kitchen door and yelling, "Mom, call Mrs. Swenson." "What's wrong?" "She isn't there. Gabrielle isn't there." "That doesn't mean there's something wrong." I lifted my hands to my temples. "I just have a bad feeling about it. Just call her." "Okay, on your cell." "I know, Cam. I'm not stupid." Mom only had to wait a moment before Mrs. Swenson picked up. They said hello, then Mom said, "Cam wants to talk to you." I took the phone and had no idea what to say. "Mrs. Swenson?" "Yes, Cam?" "I just wanted to thank Gabrielle." "Here she is." Gabrielle got on the line. "Hi, Cam." "There you are," I said with a wave of relief. "Are you looking for me? We went to Bob's." "Thank God." I could hardly suppress the emotion in my voice. "I'm okay," she said. "Did you want to come? I thought you might want to be alone." "No, Gabrielle, I... Don't worry, Cam. You just wanted to say hi." "Yes, I just wanted to say hi." We chatted for a bit, and then we agreed to meet the next day. When I hung up the phone, my mother was ready to hug me again. "I'm all right," I said. "Hugged out. I'm going to bed. It's early." "I know." I showered so I wouldn't be too hot on that humid night, and when I got in bed, I heard Catherine talking to Mom. I had forgotten all about her, and I started to think that I was wrong about the box. It's just as well, I thought. It wasn't her fault. Not Gabrielle. All the next morning, Catherine was persistently alive, so I started to forget about what had happened with the paper. I took the box out to see if I could open it. It took about 10 tries, and on the 10th, I somehow had it partially off the edge of my desk so that when it opened, I dropped it. It lay on its side, and I picked it up and peered in. It was empty. But maybe the paper had slipped when it fell. I looked around and around the desk and under my bed, moving both pieces of furniture. I found nothing. But that didn't mean it couldn't have slipped into a crack on the floor or beneath the footboard. I lay down on the cool, painted planks and peered into every crack I could find, but found nothing. I sat back in front of the box. "Did you kill Pete?" I said. Of course it just sat there. It was just a box, after all. It may sound like I was already over Pete's death, but I promise you I wasn't. My Adam's apple ached, and it seemed like it always would. But the G.I. Joe was probably just one of those things. Catherine probably did steal it after all, and didn't want to admit it. And that paper must have just blown somewhere. Or maybe she even opened it while I was gone at Jeff's and took it out. She was sneaky like that. I fished in my desk for the kind of things you would want to put in a box. I found a few coins and a couple of erasers and paper clips. Then I pushed the top down and put it on the floor next to my desk. I didn't bother hiding it or putting it back in Mom's closet because she had apparently forgotten about it. I got up the energy to do a little mowing. The lawn had been neglected for almost 2 weeks by that point, and then I went off to Jeff's to work on that game. I was taking over Europe and the rest of Africa bit by bit, and by reconquering Kamchatka every move and mostly pulling my troops out again, I kept preventing him from getting extra armies for Asia while draining his strength. He would die a slow but sure death. But I didn't see the end of that game. My mother's car pulled up in front of the house, and she hurried to the door. She was the kind of neighbor that didn't have to knock, just walk in and say hello, and this time she came straight to the dining room. "Cam, you have to come right now," she said in a voice that was desperately trying to make firm. Gabrielle, I thought. She took me by the hand and led me outside. "Cam, I want you to be ready for this. I want you to know that I love you, and I'll always be there for you." I looked down at my feet, too anguished to look at her to form words. I waited for the blow. It's Catherine. My head whipped up. Not Gabrielle? Mom paused a moment, but thank God in her emotional state she forgot I ever said that. Catherine was sitting on her windowsill, and she fell. She hugged me, and I hugged her back. "The police and ambulance are there. I wouldn't let them come get you. I wanted to tell you myself." It was right then that I saw a police car at the end of the driveway. We drove home, and there was a lot of commotion for a long time. I was questioned about a lot of things by the police. So was my mom. We went with Catherine to the hospital for an official pronouncement, then to the morgue, then back home. Once again, we were on the couch. My mother was crying and crying, not even trying to act strong. I cried too, but I had to pretend to be as sad as my mom. I'm no monster. My sorrow for my sister made me forget about any mean thing she had ever done, and normally that would have made me as sad as you would expect. But the fact is, it was counterbalanced by relief that it wasn't Gabrielle. Mom's sister came after a few hours, then her brother and their kids. I guess so I would have company too. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the police car at the end of Jeff's driveway. Why was it there? It wasn't until years later that I figured it out. When someone dies under unusual circumstances, the first suspect is a family member, or, failing that, the last person to see them. My mom was both. You don't let prime sex suspect number 1 drive off into the night unsupervised.